students of Reddit, what was the biggest teacher meltdown you ever witnessed? I had a history teacher in high school who was always stern and serious, which was great since it gave a reverence to what he was teaching about, and his unpretentious nature meant he spoke about what was important and trusting. One day however his voice broke, and after he cleared his throat it broke again. He stopped talking, put his hands in his pockets, frowned, and took a few breaths. Students, sorry about this lecture. My wife and I just decided to get a divorce. He blankly stared ahead for a second and then walked toward the door, loosening his tie. I need a drink. He exited the door. After a second he poked his head back in, of water. I'm coming back. Don't think I've forgotten about Napoleon. Not too much of a meltdown, but he was a pretty manly dude in a nerdy sort of way. AWW. That's actually kinda adorable. In primary school some kids were misbehaving and she broke down into tears, started screaming and threw a chair. We never saw her again. I also had a teacher that threw a chair. It was middle school and she was recovering from cancer. I don't remember what set her off, but she screamed at the class. If I recall, she called everyone raving lunatics, threw a chair, and then broke down and cried. It was awkward for me at 13 years old. In high school, they would do trivia questions after the announcement sometimes, and the first teacher who dialed the office with the correct answer would get a prize for the class. My math teacher really wanted to win, and hadn't yet this year, so one fateful morning, the question goes out, and we had the answer, so he called it in, but we were the second caller. In a fit of pseudo rage, he yells "damn it" and kicks this little plastic trash can across the room, where it bonks a kid right in the head. His eyes go wide and he apologizes and asks if the kid is okay, which he is. Everyone got a good laugh afterwards, including the kid who got hit, and later, we would pretend to duck whenever we didn't win the morning trivia contests. Not so much a breakdown but a break in normal behavior for sure. Our freshman English teacher was a small, soft-spoken woman who was kind of known to be a teacher you could walk all over with little, but not no, repercussions. We were in a review session after school and some upperclassmen were just hanging out in the hallways making lots of noise, so she was constantly poking her head out in the hall asking them to be quiet. As we are all very silent reading or something, the classroom door absolutely slams shut, so hard the latch didn't have time to catch and the door bounced back open. The teacher immediately yells "oh heck no," kicks off her heels and takes off out the door. She caught up with the kid, who had taken a running start and kicked the door shut, and berated him for a good 10 minutes, which we could hear clear as day from the end of the hall. It was like nothing we'd ever heard from her. Ha ha ha, you know when the heels come off, serious crap is about to go down. My 8th grade LA teacher cussed a kid out for spilling his juice. Every freaking day you do this crap. Can you please clean up my floor? My freaking god. Your parents didn't teach you to clean up after yourself. What the frick? Stop making Emmy your personal cleanup crew. That was followed by a thrown roll of paper towels and a bloody nose. Apparently she found out her sister had died under the knife that morning. I was in band. One day, one of the regular always in trouble disruptive students was being extra disruptive while the director was trying to tell us something important. So after about 5 different times of going the normal route to get him to settle down, he cracked. It got quiet and then the director bellowed, "Student's name. Are you stupid? Or just don't give a crap?" The whole room was quiet. All eyes were now on the disruptive kid who was then trying to hide behind his tuba. Then, the director continued with his announcement like nothing happened. How of course it was the tuba player. Bunch of misfits, they are. We had an art teacher in year 7, 11 years old, who would lock himself in the supply cupboards and scream and rip his hair out. It was unsettling. It's his art. I had a history teacher in HS. For context, this was in about 1980. To this day, I can't quite recall what prompted this, but he stood in front of the entire class, shaking with rage, and said, "I am a homosexual." We were all just dumbfounded. Not that he was gay, I think most of us had figured that out already, but that he felt obligated to make that announcement. I declare homosexuality. My super dorky history teacher in 8th grade was the nicest teacher I've ever met, but there were a couple class clowns in our class and he usually dealt with them okay. One day though, they were obnoxious the entire class from the moment he walked in and he snapped, yelling and chucking his stapler across the room. He nailed a staple right into Ben Franklin's forehead. He immediately apologized and went about his day normally, while all the students went silent. Nobody ever bothered him again after that day. Surprise, Ben didn't go to the principal about that. I had a Spanish teacher in middle school that was so tired of us turning in broken Spanish on our homework assignments that she screamed at us and called us stupid Americans before throwing pieces of chalk at us one after the other. Another time she got on her knees and started praying the rosary in front of us when a girl said El Polo Nugget. El Polo Nugget LMAO. Maybe not a meltdown per se, but I had a chemistry class that was held in a huge auditorium with really steep stairs. The professor always walked all around the room while we took quizzes and tests. One day he tripped halfway up the auditorium stairs and took a heck of a fall. He landed face down, unhurt apart from bruises, on the floor, and before we could really react he starts banging his fists on the floor and screaming, "Entropy, entropy, entropy." That sounds like a recovery. Junior year in university, my genetics professor was in the middle of a lecture when authorities took him out of the auditorium, thank goodness, and informed him that his wife, the dean of our college, had been struck and killed by a motor vehicle that morning. He retreated to his office and proceeded to tear the place apart like a tornado had gone through it. He ripped the top of his desk off its frame, pulled down all of his bookcases, books, pages, papers, all sorts of documents and furniture strewn everywhere in pieces. By the time I graduated he still wasn't the same man as he was before that awful day. To be fair, that's a pretty solid reason to tear apart an office if there ever was one. This was in high school. We had a band teacher. His nickname was Pinky because he had very red hair and pale skin with a red tint. Borderline albino. Every time he got mad his entire face turned tomato red. I don't remember the sequence of events, but he was already frustrated. Everyone in the room knew to shut up so that we didn't pee him off. Well, everyone except this one dippy girl. She asked something along the lines of "Are you mad?" and kept pestering him. He finally snapped. His face turned that familiar shade of tomato red and he threw the pencil he was using to conduct across the room. He then stormed out and slammed the door hard enough that it could be heard on the other side of the building. He quit soon after. I've seen it firsthand. Being a high school band director is hard enough without kids trying to intentionally bother you. A lot band teachers at the high school level quit after a few years. The band director I work for in the fall has to deal with so much crap from parents. It's ridiculous. A lot of the parents are pretty cool, but there's always at least one crazy a year. Year 9 maths class. Our teacher was off sick and an early 20s substitute teacher came in to cover. She was lovely, kind, friendly, although a bit timid and shy. One girl in our class used a fountain pen to flick ink on a skirt she was wearing one day. Poor women noticed her do it, didn't say a word and just went to her desk, put her head in her hands and sobs. Doesn't move to 10 minutes at least. Eventually a friend of mine goes to get another teacher. The sub was escorted out, still crying, and was seen for the rest of the day just crying in her car. Didn't move for another 4 or so hours. It was probably her only work outfit and she wasn't making enough to buy anything else to wear. Similar thing happened with a new sub in HS. They have it rough. 8th grade math teacher. He was well known for his short temper, but this particular day was bad. There was a kid in my class, Justin, that never listened and never did his homework. One day, math teacher just had it with Justin, grabbed his desk, with him in it, and picked it up and slammed it back down on the ground a few times. After that, he shoved the desk with Justin in it across the room. Justin was fine, thankfully. Math teacher just stormed out, told my mom, and I guess a few other parents called the school about it too. He was gone for a few weeks and had to take anger management classes. I just went by my old middle school a few weeks ago and he's the assistant principal now. Who would have expected that? He got promoted to management. Probably not a bad idea. I don't know if it really counts, but our former Latin teacher once slapped a kid across the face because the kid made fun of her dead husband. She got suspended shortly afterwards. In high school our government teacher freaked out on my class. We had a few talkers in the back corner but they finally broke him. He flipped his podium lectern over and started screaming at us. He called us the worst group of kids he'd ever had to teach and that he was 110% accurate that we were going to be nothings. Then he went to his desk and drank his entire thermos of coffee. A few years later, he was having a retirement party at his house. I was close friends with his son. He revealed that the thermos was 80% vodka and 20% coffee. Dang, that's fricked. Was it just your class that he drank, or was he an alcoholic? I'm genuinely curious. No sarcasm intended. Had a sub in 5th grade. I was a really unorganized kid and having to dig through my desk for crap wasn't uncommon. Sub went to collect our homework one by one and I was still digging through pulling a bunch of stuff out when she got to me. She got all towering and told me this was unacceptable. Dumped my desk in front of me and told me I was staying in from recess to organize it. One girl said you can't make him do that and the sub raised her voice and spit out, "You don't tell me what to do, brat. I can do whatever I want." The whole class revolted and a neighboring teacher came in to see what was up. The sub claimed I was being lippy and this was my punishment. Then the whole class spoke up and informed him of what really happened and we were all let out for recess. Came back and a lunch lady was sitting at the teacher's desk instead. As the kid who was always picked on by everyone, it was nice to see the whole class stand up for me that day. This is an awesome story. Frick people who go on power trips, especially when over children. In high school, I turned in a form to my science teacher a day late. She screamed at me, walked out the classroom and was gone for nearly an hour. Class had started and everyone had speculations, blaming me for what happened. Teacher comes back, joyful and smiling, says she just needed a walk around the campus to recover. I'm surprised they blamed anyone for the teacher leaving. My HS would probably have thrown a party. In elementary school, the cool thing to do was put hand sanitizer in excess on your hand and sniff it pretending to get really high. Things escalated to the point of our teacher, at full volume, yelling, "Where is the hand sanitizer?" A brave soul returned it and the teacher threw it against the wall. I taught public high school for 7 years and have been teaching in a university ever since. Every time one of these threads pops up, I expect to find the story of how I once broke down in tears when a cell phone rang in class, or the time I threw up in a trash can, brushed my teeth with bottled water right in front of all 42 of them, asked a janitor to come down and take the trash out, and went back to teaching after my favorite student of all time faked barfing noises because he knew it would make me puke. For future reference, brushing your teeth after vomiting is a very bad idea. Rinse with water or mouthwash, but don't brush or rub your teeth. The acid in your vomit softens your teeth, and brushing them while they're soft can strip away a lot of the enamel, which is bad. Likewise, don't brush within 30-60 minutes of eating. We had a physical education teacher who sweat like a mofo whenever sexual subjects were raised. He ended up having to be a substitute teacher for one of our sex ed lessons. We were very aware of his discomfort discussing the subject and asked him lots of in-depth questions, making sure we used all the correct anatomical terminology. The guy had a class A anxiety attack. Pity no one had taught us about those, and I was genuinely afraid he was going to have a heart attack. Red face, profuse sweating, breathing difficulty and a look of primal terror in his eyes. We got the early mark we were fishing for, but I think we did the poor fellow some real emotional damage. We had a biology teacher who, whenever sexual topics came up, as it were, would get rather excited, in a physical way, with, you know, a raging boner. He ended up doing sex ed for my class. It was not great. We had an art teacher who had one glass eye, a student who had a rep for being an butthole. From a whole family of buttholes, his sister beat me up in infant school and wisely decided to stick his head around the door to the art room and yell, in a voice that could shatter glass OI, "Harris, you one-eye jack." This did not go down at all well with Mr. Harris, who terrified most kids. Cue manic Welsh art teacher chasing student over the playing fields with a tent spike. The whole class was looking out the window following the chase. All it needed was yakety sax playing as a soundtrack. From a whole family of buttholes, his sister beat me up in infant school. Never thought I'd be reading about infants beating each other up in school. You have been visited by the comfortable garlic bread of good back support. Subscribe to Updoot Reddit in 3 weeks or never sit comfortably again. You have a lot of time for this one. I understand if you're busy. No rush. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.